I turn mine on and say, okay, be sure and turn your microphone on. We're going to go ahead and call this meeting to order and declare a quorum of 7 members present. We're going to start the workshop and do C1, consideration, discussion, and possible action related to the eligibility ranking forms for Head Start and Early Head Start 2016-17. Dr. Ely.
Thank you, Dr. Yokin. The first two items on the workshop agenda this afternoon, go ahead and take one and pass one down there, have to do with Head Start and Early Head Start. And I'd like to remind the board that they are both action items, so they will call for action in the workshop session. We have with us today to discuss the particulars of item 1. We have Shelley Rice. Shelley is one of the newer folks in Early Education Services. She's the Educational Mental Health and Disabilities Specialist for Head Start. Did I get it all?
Yes, you did.
Excellent.
You like using acronyms so people don't know whether you're a spy or something? Yeah.
We also have joining her Greg McIntyre. In his duties as Deputy Superintendent of Curriculum Instruction, he also serves as the Executive Director of Head Start. And so with that, Ms. Rice, take it away.
Okay, if you'll look at the first one that's highlighted in yellow,
yeah.
that's the Head Start eligibility form. And the only thing we're changing on that is the year at the top. And we are adding 20 points for pregnant teenagers at the time of application, because during our process we decided that it's most important to serve those mothers first instead of opposed to a mom that maybe is 30 years old with a lot more life experience. We think giving more points to a teenage mom will help them get accepted faster. And then the next one is highlighted in orange. And again, we're changing the date at the top, adding the 20 points for the teen parent. And we've also added the word medical under disabilities for expectant mothers. We are going to require that they have a medical referral if it's considered a high-risk pregnancy, so that we know exactly how to help the mom in her pregnancy for that.
Could you remind the board a little bit of what we use these numbers for and how we rank for kids in Head Start?
So this is just the paper copy, but we have a system that we enter all these numbers into. So if the child is over income or a disability, any of those things, then we use the point system for their enrollment and to accept them into our program. If you're SSI or foster child, you're automatic. You don't have to go through all of this. It states that somewhere on here. You just skip down. But we do rank everybody on a point system, and it makes us have our waiting list also. So we know when someone moves, we can fill someone in.
Great. Does anybody have any questions?
I'm not sure of that exact percentage, but if we can't serve them in Head Start, then they automatically qualify for pre-K, and we offer them that. So they're only on the wait list if they don't accept pre-K, which is a half-day program, so some want a full-day option.
Entertain a motion. Requires action, please.
I'll make a motion that we accept these changes as presented.
I second.
Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? So the motion carries 7-0. Thank you. We'll move on to C2, consideration, discussion, and possible action related to the availability of COLA cost of living allowance funds for Head Start and Early Head Start 2016-17 in the amount of $35,810. Dr. Ely.
Thank you, Dr. Yokin. As the board members know, we work with Head Start in a partnership between CSISD and the Head Start program. Head Start is a federally funded program, and so they have a number of requirements, and they also have sometimes a number of benefits. And some of those benefits are cost of living allowance adjustments that are made periodically, not annually. This would be our first cost of living adjustment that we've had in maybe about 4 years.
About 2012-13.
Okay. So with information about the cost of living allowance funds for Head Start and what action we would need to take, Ms. Rice.
All right. We've gotten the opportunity to receive a 1.8% increase. And so for our budget, that's $35,810. And when we get these, 50% of the funds must be used for staff salaries. And the other 50% is, it can be used for salaries, or it can be used to pay for increased costs in our program. So, we would just like your approval to see if we can. And Sharon Jackson has to write, the grant for approval for this.
And these were already approved by policy.
Yes, already approved by policy.
Any questions?
I make the motion that we approve as presented. I make the motion that we approve as presented, Madam President.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Oh, yeah. Next it should be Queen Mom, which is what my mom, which is what my daughter calls me.
That's what it was.
That's what it is, yeah. Okay. All those in favor of the motion as presented, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? So the motion carries 7-0. Thank you. We'll move on to item C3, consideration, discussion, and possible action related to the 2016-17 budget. She's got all of our phones. Well, she's got all of our phones automatically. If you write Mom, it says Queen Mom in it. If you write Dad, it says King Edward, which is John. And then she's Princess Karis, of course. And we have her Waffleness, which is the granddaughter.
Mr. Martindale has a presentation that he'll be giving us in just a second. We're searching for the wireless mouse.
Okay, so I can tell you about, you want to hear about the rest of my family too? So, no, it's her Waffleness, that's the dog, yeah. And her Waffleness's parents are Lady Sarah and Vince the Prince. Are you ready? Because I'm running out of things to talk about here.
Yes, Madam President.
That's my granddog, is her Waffleness. No, it's just the royal family. I don't know. We don't have anybody named Luke, so we don't worry about it. Okay. I'm done. I'm done.
All right, just want to take a few minutes this afternoon, just follow up from the information we shared with the board last month with our original budget projections. Not really anything changed from our projections last month, but I did want to just review those items again. A lot of our data points that will influence or fine-tune those projections and bring us more in line for next year will come about during the month of June. So just want to just take a few minutes and walk back through this information again that Dr. Ely shared with the board last month, and then just talk about June and additional information coming forward in June, Madam President.
Well, we want people to be able to hear the wonderful information we're talking about. And don't say anything when the mouse doesn't work. You're on air.
Here we go. Through the course of the spring, as we began our preparations and projections, the directors and principals had the opportunity to submit new requests for next year as far as personnel in their respective departments and campuses, as well as exceptional items or items that would go beyond their normal operating budgets. We had a total of a little over $5.4 million submitted to us for consideration for next school year. And as we mentioned last month, at this point in time, and in our initial budget runs, we have included a little over 1.4 million of new personnel items for our campuses and districts for next year. In addition to that, we've picked up $325,000 worth of items, exceptional items that were submitted also for next year. However, we've been able to pick up some of those in current year budget due to higher higher average daily attendance numbers than were originally projected when we created the budget for this school year. And you'll see a number of those items, those exceptional items, when I review them in just a few minutes. You'll see a number of those in this month's agenda for consideration. Some of the new personnel, as far as campus position adds, intermediate school principal number 3, and I believe that school actually gets a name this evening.
Wasn't it Mesquite High or middle school?
Thank you, Dr. Yokin. That's exactly what I was thinking. Mesquite Trail sounds really good, but maybe you and I can vote on that one. Intermediate school principal number 3, and of course a secretary joining Ms. DeGear at semester as she makes preparations for opening of the intermediate school in 17-18. An additional high school counselor at each of our comprehensive high schools, 3 additional intermediate school teachers to help with class size issues at Cypress Grove, 1 collective middle school teacher, that's a half an ESL teacher at AMCMS and a half a Spanish teacher at College Station Middle School, and a net total of 3.5 teachers between Consolidated High School and College Station High School, and again, that's to address some larger class sizes in certain areas. Additional campus position adds, a half-time nurse at College View High School. Right now, Oakwood, AMCMS, those folks are assisting with the needs there at Timber. This will be a person at College View. Half-time, they'll also serve as the district's nurse coordinator. An additional dual language teacher at Southwood Valley. The numbers there drive the need for an additional dual language teacher. At Oakwood, a reading specialist position and a dyslexia teacher. Dyslexia teachers will service several campuses, not typically just one.
So on the nurse coordinator, so that's they're going to be a nurse half and coordinator half, or is it just one half?
The collective whole is a half. It's a half a position total. Okay. Yes. So they'll have both of those responsibilities, fulfill those on as a half-time employee. From the district standpoint, facilities and maintenance, and again, this is still including that $1.42 million plumber. This would be the second added to the district. We have 1 now to service all of our facilities. HVAC techs, we have 3.5 total. So an additional HVAC tech and additions to our technology department with the ever-growing technology and devices, and being able to maintain those and service those and meet the needs of our campuses. We need to add support to our technology department as well. You'll also see ads in the purchasing department, an additional courier. We currently have 3, and I think it's been that way, Dr. Ely, correct me if I'm wrong, since like 2007, somewhere in that ball game. So you know how many campuses we've added, how many students, those types of things, and those 3 gentlemen have put forth a very diligent effort, but this would add an additional courier to help them with the number of buildings. Also from curriculum instruction support toward the campuses from Central Office of Science Coordinator, Special Programs Coordinator, and a diagnostician as well. All of those would have impact on instruction and the services provided in the classroom. Exceptional items that we were able to pick up in current year general fund of $325,000. You'll see a vehicle for the Kate department at Consol. That's on the agenda for consideration this evening, as well as vehicles for our facilities and maintenance department. Technologies approved for vehicles in this amount as well. That item will be coming to the board next month, though. But vehicles for facilities maintenance and consolidated career and technology department are on the agenda for this month. Also for some stage lighting work and replacing the stage curtain at the auditorium at Consolidated High School. That's also on this $325,000. That's on the agenda for consideration this evening, as well as we have purchased some T-tests, some appraisal software. I believe Ms. Kovacs will be speaking to you about the new teacher appraisal system here shortly. This appraisal software will assist our campuses and teachers with managing this much more comprehensive appraisal system. The items still remaining on hold, we have a little over $500,000 still remaining on hold for consideration and to look back to whenever we possibly have some adjustment with new numbers in June. 312,000 new personnel, a little over 200,000 for exceptional items. The 312,000 includes 2 teachers for College Station Middle School, again to address some class sizes there, and an additional teacher at Cypress Grove Intermediate to go with the ones that have already been approved. Those are campus level positions that are on hold, some that are on the district level. Again, more support for our facilities and maintenance and technology, as well as the consideration of addition to our business office. They're like many of our support departments. They have not, we have not added to those departments in some time. So those folks are working very hard. So as we grow, this may be the time to try to add support there as well. Those are the positions that are on hold. As far as exceptional items, some software, additional software requested by the technology department for student data management, inventory control, so that we can better track our fixed assets and those types of things. That's requested from our business and purchasing department. And of course, some band equipment for Consolidated and its feeder schools. Those are all items that I know we shared with you guys last month. Our initial budget run projections are utilizing a 3.75% increase in student enrollment. We're trending about 4.1 currently for this school, so that's a good conservative value for us at this point in time. Also, property values, the initial projection provided myself and Ms. Parks from the appraisal district was 6%, and we'll have updates on both those values again as we wrap up the school year and move into June. But those were the initial values used to project our revenue. On the expenditure side, a 2% increase on salaries, which is truly, when it comes back to the employee, is 1.5% because of the increased 0.5% of TRS contribution. At this time, we don't have anything, or 0% accounted for increase for health insurance contributions, supplies and materials at 1%, and in this value that we've shown you does carry the $1.42 million of new personnel that we've already spoke about. So with all those items, as we mentioned last month, that has us a little bit over $2 million as far as the deficit. Next month, if we move into this.
Can I ask a question back on the health insurance? When will we know what those, when the
June
premiums will
15th.
be? June 15th? Okay.
Right. And Mr. Schaefer, and just say, I'll mention, as far as those items that will impact our next projections, I anticipate all that information coming in right about the same time, middle of June, so that we can update our revenue and possible additional expenditures if we wish to consider them. So this is just a worksheet. I've highlighted the numbers that I've kind of mentioned as we project out for 5 years, the 3.75 here as far as our enrollment or ADA. 6% on our property values. Here's the 1.42 million of new personnel and our projected deficit at this time. This is a number we track as well. This is our cash flow number, so we need to be cognizant of that as we make projections up here and update these and the impact that it has as we look out, 4 or 5 years down the road. I would expect to be able to bring the board updated projections next month. We will, as we end this school year and we finalize our attendance rate for this school year, that could have a little bit of an impact on this number that we project for next year, this 3.75. Also, we'll begin to get weekly updates in June from the appraisal district as they settle different protests on values, appraised values, and those types of things. So we should be able to have some clean numbers on both of those as we progress next month. My hopes are that we'll be able to consider some of those items on hold when we speak this time next month. So again, just an update, no changes, but just wanted to follow up from what we shared with the board, or Dr. Ely shared with the board last month.
Thank you. Any comments or questions?
I do have one comment, and it's really I'm sorry. We do have one big issue resolved, and that's the lawsuit. And I guess I want to commend you all for, I'll use the phrase, not betting on the come. I'm glad we were conservative in our view and did not count on a different outcome in that, because as has come to pass, we lost. So it's good that we weren't counting on that. So good job. I'm glad we don't have to go back and redo a lot because we counted on money we don't have.
I appreciate that, Mr. Harris. It's always tempting to think, okay, things are going to get rosier in the future, so we can take care of things now, and the future will take care of itself. And with the unfortunate ruling from our point of view, that won't be coming anytime soon. So I have a few thoughts about that when we have our regular scheduled meeting at 7 during the superintendent report, talk a little bit about what happened with the Supreme Court and kind of where we go from here as a state. But thank you for that.
Thank you. Anybody else?
And I would just say it's clear we are continually running a deficit, and unless our wonderful state legislature changes anything, we are clearly going to be in a bind at some point. Is there a point at which we consider trying to pass a measure in the area to get that extra 2 cents of possible tax percentage-wise?
So it's interesting at our staff meeting that we had just this morning, in light of where we are with the resolution in the school of finance case. At some point, it will probably be incumbent upon this board or a future board to consider going for a tax ratification election, tax rollback election for an additional 2 pennies at some point to consider that. We'll remind the board that those pennies are kept 100% of the revenue is kept in the district. The board does have the authority to go all the way up to $1.17 per $100 of valuation, but between the 7th penny and the 17th penny, we would, at this point, give back to the state about half of that. So that has definite bearings on capacity for revenue in the school district. What you have seen tonight does not take into account the additional 2 pennies or additional any pennies. Is the 1.4 cents. That's what you've seen tonight.
And the other thing that we can infer from what you have shown us is that the deficit that was projected for 2015-16 will be at least $325,000 less than what we had approved, because we are now using that money, assuming the articles are approved in the regular scheduled meeting, for some of the deferred projects.
So for a number of years, the board has adopted a deficit budget. And for those in the audience who don't know what that is, that's a budget where we anticipate spending more in expenditures than we bring in revenue. And for the past several years, we have come in with the actuals at the end of the year, the audited numbers with the with the deficit actually being less than was adopted in August of that year. In fact, last school year, the 2014-15 school year, we anticipated a deficit, but we had a $325,000 surplus. So the fund balance, the healthy fund balance that we have, we continue to have that fund balance. But to Dr. Weston's point, there will be at some point as we project out into the future that we will need to look at other revenue sources or other decisions to be made in regards to how to allocate funds in the future.
Thank you. Anything else?
I think it's worth pointing out that when you take a look at the majority of the other high growth districts in our state, we remain well under in terms of the rate we're charging from a tax perspective. And we've done that for a long time, thanks to the good stewardship of the school boards that have come to us previously, and we've been using funds that we have in reserve, but those funds have been dwindling relatively quickly over a number of years. So I just think it would be good for us to start thinking about the possibility of that happening and what it takes to make that happen. But at some point, underfunding of the school districts by the legislature is going to come home to roost, and we've been fortunate not to have to deal with that directly here. But I think we were all hoping the Supreme Court decision would go a different direction. Clearly it did not, and I don't think we could probably sit here as a board and just sit around and hope that the legislature is going to come around and start doing things in a more equitable manner, from our perspective at least. So that's my 2 cents.
Nice. Anybody else want to offer their 2 cents? Okay. Yeah. All right, with that, then we'll move on to C4, consideration, discussion, possible action related to the 2016-17 school board meeting schedule. Dr. Ely.
Dr. Yoke and members of the board, this is just a quick item just to remind the board that in June is normally the time that we set our board meeting schedules for the upcoming year, with the first meeting starting in July. So we will ask you to approve a board meeting schedule at next month's meeting. I just wanted to kind of ask the question. We've been doing the third Tuesday of the month for a long time. Is that still working for everybody? Maybe we want to think about that over the next month or so. The administration is looking at July and whether or not we need to have a meeting. We kind of had this discussion every couple of years ago. Could we skip a meeting in July? I think we're leaning right now towards needing that particular meeting. I believe it's on the third Tuesday, which I believe is the 19th. I could be wrong on that. But just wanted to hear any comments that anybody has about the proposed, how the dates work, or any other things that you might have to offer, or if it's the board's pleasure, just to think about it for the next month and when we have action in June.
I'm comfortable with just leaving it the way it is, in that I plan more than 1 month ahead, but that's just that's just me. I do think that we need to be sure that we're going to have a quorum and figure out now if it looks like we'll have enough people on the 19th, because I do believe that there were some individuals who may have guesstimated that we wouldn't have a July meeting, so we just need to be sure that that's going to work. If folks would check their schedules.
I'm good.
We're not trading. Okay, so I thought you were going to be gone in July.
I guess I would throw this for the board's consideration. There are a number of districts who divide their time and meet twice a month and have a work session one time a month with a regular board meeting at a second time during the month. It has been previous boards' desire to keep both of those on the same night and have a longer time together, but one time a month. Always up for change, or if that's what the board would like to continue doing, please let us know when we come back and talk about it next month.
I prefer to keep that the same.
Second. I can't say that, sorry. No, I agree.
I think one time a month works really well for this group. Yeah, particularly coming into the rezoning, we're going to have a great opportunity to, I said that. I apologize.
Boundary adjustment, please.
I'm
Thank
under
you.
a lot of stress in my life now. Give me a break. We're going to spend a lot of time together in the fall. Perhaps it would behoove us to just have our regular board meetings once a month. Okay. We'll move on to C5, consideration discussion on possible action related to the teacher appraisal T-test and the district principal appraisal system beginning 2016-17. Dr. Ely.
Thank you, Dr. Yokin. There are a number of changes going on in the state in regards to education. One of the big ones that's going to affect principals and especially teachers are the changes in the appraisal process and the appraisal systems that will be used across the state beginning with the 16-17 school year. We want to spend a little bit of time taking you through T-tests, the new teacher evaluation system, and talk about how that might look a little different than it has in the past, because it may be important for you to know as you interact with teachers from around the district in your day-to-day life. And then we'll touch on a little bit our history of the principal appraisal system and kind of where we're thinking that we're going with that. So here to take us through and give us a thorough explanation of this is Kelly Kovacs, our Director for Instruction and Leadership Development.
Good evening. I don't know how thorough this will be. I really wanted to just give you guys an overview of what the new teacher evaluation system is going to look like. Much like student, even more, thanks.
Or pull it closer to you.
Much like student assessment has changed over time, teacher appraisal has changed over time. So we thought we would start with just a quick recap of the most recent evaluation system. What we're currently using, the state adopted system, is known affectionately as PDOS, which stands for Professional Development and Appraisal System. That's been around actually since 1997, and as you can imagine, a lot has changed in education since that time. So probably the biggest reason why the shift is going from PDAS to T-test and teacher appraisal is because of those changes in as we've evolved in education. There also has been some straying over time. You provide some training, it's many years later, and you're expecting people to still follow any kind of rubric with fidelity. It's not going to happen very well. So it was time for a new system. The way they did that was something we'll talk about in a moment, how they really developed it. But the new system, just as a timeline, was piloted this last year by about 60 districts, and almost 200 of them actually went ahead and started using that as their evaluation system already this year. But it is full implementation for the state next year for everyone, including College Station ISD. So how was the instrument developed? They had a committee of folks, much like we like to do in education, and they were from a variety of areas and backgrounds. It did include some teachers, which we think is a really important part of any system that's going to evaluate teachers, and principals who are actually going to be doing the evaluations. They then started with updating the teacher standards. It had been a while since they had looked at those, and so they spent some time thinking about what are some of those updates in education that aren't currently reflected in those standards. And then from there built the rubric to say, okay, if that is a standard that we would like to see, what would that really look like? What would it entail? And we'll call that proficient. And then what would be beyond proficient? And so that's how they started to develop that rubric. The key feature of T-tests, and this is something that we're really excited about with this change, is that it is designed to support teachers in professional growth. It is not supposed to be a one-time, here's what I saw, here's my evaluation of you, see you next year kind of a document. It really is based on the conversation, which we'll talk about in a moment. The three components of T-tests, the first two are much like PDAS. There's always been a component where the teacher thought about goal setting and what kinds of professional development they needed to be able to reach those goals. And the evaluation cycle with lots of different observations in the class, both formally and informally. The new piece that we're going to talk just a little bit about tonight is the student growth measure, and that's something that we've not had in the past. Dr. Ely and I debated a little bit how much to show you of the T-test document, because the rubric itself is, if I printed it out for you, it's about 40 pages long. It's really quite wordy because it does have all of those standards with a rubric on each one. So instead, we opted for this little overview, just kind of giving you an idea of, as those conversations are happening between the principal evaluator and the teacher, what kinds of things are they talking about? And it's everything from how are you planning to what does it actually look like in your classroom, including culture and classroom environment, things that you would typically expect to see on an evaluation document. The things that are there on that last line, the professional practices and responsibilities, are already included on the PDAS as well. Those are not new necessarily, except for the school community involvement. That's a new piece that's been added with this new document as well. The student growth measure, we have not had much training on, honestly. There are districts right now who are piloting the student growth measure, but this is the first year for the pilot. So we've not had a lot of feedback on what that's really going to look like. And the state decided to go ahead and roll this out in phases. So year one, next year, will be using the rubric as part of the document. The following year, then an additional layer of the student growth measure will be added. And there are 4 ways that districts can choose to show student growth. You can see them there. Students get to choose, or actually school districts get to choose. There's a lot of customization allowed. In fact, a district doesn't have to say, okay, we're going to use pre and post assessments in all of our schools. If they wanted to, you could go all the way down to the student level and say, this student in particular, we really want to evaluate using a portfolio. The rest of the class, I think, would do well with pre and post assessments. We haven't decided that yet as a district. It's a big decision, and it's a lot of discussion that we need to have still. And based on the fact that there's not much training out there, or other districts who have completed the process that we can talk to, we're still working on what that's going to look like for us. When that student growth measure is added, it will be 20% of a teacher's evaluation. That's very different, and you can imagine that some teachers might have a little bit of anxiety about that because it's such a new thing, and it's part of why we wanted to be sure that you guys were aware that this is a much different evaluation system than we've had in the past, and that some of the components are things that are very different for us and for the teachers. What then happens is then there's this great little rubric that says, okay, if your student growth is 20%, and your observation and self-assessment results are 80%, where do you fall in this lovely, colorful graph? But you can see then that gives an overall score for the teacher in terms of the rating system. So just overall, what is T-Test going to bring? It really is based on growth, and we are excited about those things. It provides positive feedback in areas where teachers are doing things well as areas to refine and grow for every single teacher. Even your rock star 20-year veteran teacher is going to get feedback that's going to help them to grow. We're excited about that. It is designed to be formative, and it is based on the conversation. With conversations, those obviously take time. So one of the things that we know is going to happen is that this instrument will result in some additional time on the part of both the evaluator and the teacher being evaluated. And then, of course, as we said, the student growth measures will be something that we'll be adding in the 17-18 school year, and that'll be something new. Before we talk about principal evaluations, you may have lots of questions, and I may or may not be able to answer them all, but I'll be happy to answer any that I can.
Thank you for the summary. So the first thing that comes to my mind, and I'm sure the others have questions as well, is the amount of time for the evaluation and what kind of pre-training and pre-expectation setting is going to be set so that the teachers are more comfortable with the process as they go through it. Because there's a giving me the document and read it versus me actually having a conversation so that I can kind of minimize my anxiety as I'm going through the process. Is that going to be something that you do before the school year starts, or have you had an opportunity to think through that?
So we actually have a group of administrators who have already been T-test trained, and we're talking about this exact thing because it is so new, and teachers are going to need to be pretty familiar with the document. Typically, we don't start formal observations for the first 3 weeks of school. Our goal this year is to not start until after the first 6 weeks of school to give us more time for that professional development so that teachers are really better understanding of the document and how they're going to be rated, because it's not meant to be a gotcha, and certainly there will have to be grace in these first couple of years as both the evaluator and the teacher are understanding the document. I don't think that we can expect that everyone's going to walk away with an exemplary rating at the end of year one, because we haven't provided the professional development yet to them in areas that are new for their, as in terms of their standards either. So we've talked a lot about that and the need for a lot of training for the teacher.
Other questions?
So what's the biggest source of anxiety for teachers in the district, would you say? Or what do you anticipate that being, given that this is,
I was going to
and
say,
how's
I'm
it?
not sure they know yet what they're most anxious about. I think it will eventually be the student measurement that's going to be added the following year. I think this year it's the overall instrument really addresses the need for teachers to have more student-driven lessons, which is something that, of course, we want, but not everyone is well-versed in that yet. And so getting to that point, or even trying lessons that are very student-driven, means that I have to give up control as a teacher, which is sometimes difficult to get to.
Do you think it's more subjective or objective than it has been in the past?
I think it's actually going to be a more accurate reflection of what's happening in the class. But it also, because of the way the document is written, instead of just being given a 1, 2, 3, or 4 on a rating scale, I'm actually given words that tell me what I would need to get to the next level up. So I can't say for sure. I think it's probably still as subjective as it always is. What did I see and hear in the classroom? There's only so much I can see and hear and document. But that is one of the hallmarks of the T-tests, is that you have to document if I saw something or didn't see something. I have to actually write the words that you said or didn't say, instead of just saying, yeah, I think that was a 3. Why was it a 3, for example?
And I would say it's more authentic as well because of the ongoing nature of the conversation. The pre-conference requirement to visit with the teachers about going in there, I think, will help prepare the evaluator for going into the classroom, and I think can really help focus the post-evaluation conference as well. It's really more of a holistic, stem to stern look at the teaching craft, not the output of just the 45 minutes that you happen to be in the teacher's classroom.
Do you think it will result in higher levels of academic success for the students?
I absolutely do. What I like about this is that it's not a threshold that everyone must get over to be at a certain level. It takes every teacher and even our very best teachers and will make them improve. It's really centered on a growth mindset. All of us can grow. All of us can do better in our craft. And whether you're a year 0 teacher just coming to us or whether you've been here for 15 years, I think this process will help result in better teaching, and I am confident that it will result in better student performance.
So this is the software package that we took care of last month. Yes, that's going to take care of this and make it as easy as possible from an administrative standpoint.
So part of the change in how those evaluations happen, as I said, is you have to document everything that you saw or heard. And our current system is more of a checkmark system.
Right.
So the software that we were adding allows the evaluator to type in their notes and then drag and drop them into the proper place as evidence. The other thing is that if a teacher says, well, I did actually take care of, this particular standard, I went to this training and here's my documentation, that also can be uploaded and all included in the same. It's really more of a way to make it as painless as possible in a system that's going to be a little bit more cumbersome.
Is there any type of self-assessment that's brought in to that, or did I just miss it?
Right, yeah, no, the teacher does complete a self-evaluation towards the beginning, and that's part of that goal-setting process that they do at the very beginning of the year. Actually, they do it at the end of the year, but this time we didn't have, because it's new, so it'll be part of that cycle.
Anything else? Okay, so we're ready to go on to principals.
Before we go, I do want to echo the Kelly's comments about support. It's one of the best parts of this is the actual continuing support and professional development that will be provided through this system. Obviously, we provide support and provide professional development, but having it as a part of the appraisal system, I think really is a great step by the state to have that there. So I think we've hit most of those things. This is really the big areas, I think, that we're going to see as we transition for the first year. But I do, before we get into principal evaluation, I do want to talk about the growth measure as well. You may recall less than a year ago, the state of Texas was in discussions, arguments, whatever you would call it, with the U.S. Department of Education regarding just this 20% of student performance as a part of teacher evaluation. The state passed a law that brought us T-tests with 20% as a part of the evaluation. We had to submit that as a part of No Child Left Behind to the federal government. It did not pass the USDE's vision of what student performance measurement should be for a teacher appraisal. And the two entities, the state and the federal government, were going back and forth over this particular issue. Then the landscape changed when the U.S. Congress passed ESSA, the Every Student Succeeds Act, and a unique departure. They took this 20%, this student performance component of teacher evaluation out of requirements from the federal government. So now we still have the state system, which is T-test, which still has 20%. But right now we don't. ESSA does not call for that, which is interesting. And we have one more legislative session that will begin in January of 2017. And I know the Texas Association of School Administrators, and I imagine a number of other entities, teachers groups, and others will be throwing their support around this 20% and removing that. Now, whether that happens or not, it remains to be seen. But that will be one of the hot button items that we'll be talking about as spring 2017 rolls around, I am sure. With that in mind, let's talk about principal evaluation. The state does have a system as well. T-test is for teachers. T-PES is for principals. We were not in charge of nomenclature. And these are some of the things that are required, that are a part of T-PES: a self-assessment, goal setting, pre-evaluation conference, mid-year monitoring, consolidated performance assessment with the end-of-year discussion, performance discussion at the end of the year, and a final evaluation and goal setting. So most of those things we already do in College Station ISD through our CSISD principal evaluation. You can see the arrows point to what is on the recommended T-PES and then what we do already. I want to take you back a little bit in the evolution of our principal evaluation process. Mr. McIntyre, in a previous position as Director of Human Resources, took, in the early 2000s, took the district through a process to develop a principal evaluation document. And it was a good document. We looked at some best practices from across the state. We looked at the learner-centered principal standards. It incorporated multiple conferences throughout the year, beginning, a middle of the year, and an end. And also, it included student performance and growth measures. We were actually holding campus and district administrators accountable for student growth and student performance as early as, what, Greg, 2003 or so in the school district. It yielded a numerical rating, which corresponded to a label, because we love labels. Outstanding, above expectations, met expectations, or below. As that process went on, it became a little. We had changes in the assessment system. The first things to drop off were the student performance and growth measures. I know a number of administrators still used the old system absent those two indicators. And then we kind of had a little bit of a drift with different principals using different evaluation systems. And so, so we just had some different evaluation processes that were going on in different parts of the district. So coming back to the summer of 2014, prior to the 14-15 school year, I felt it was important to make sure that all of our administrators were being evaluated and making sure that they're being met with multiple times a year so that we can document progress in doing all of our jobs. And so we kind of resurrected this particular process. However, instead of tying it to the learner-centered principal standards up to the early 2000s, we looked at the job descriptions for the administrators. We went through a process of rewriting job descriptions for principals, assistant principals, directors, to make sure they really reflected the work that's going on day to day. And we tied the evaluation system to that. It does incorporate goal setting and monitoring for the principal part of it. It is based, as I said, on the principal job description. It also yields a numerical rating that corresponds to the very same labels that we talked about before. The process was better in the sense that we had a process and it was ongoing throughout the year. The instrument, I would say, was less than ideal. I think it was good to be tied to a number of things that a principal is responsible for. Probably the thing that was the weakest part of it, though, was the numerical calculation and the rating that came out of that. So as we had this opportunity for changing our teacher evaluation system, we also have an opportunity for addressing our principal evaluation document. We have a couple of choices, and maybe it says this on the next slide, I'm not sure. Oh, so moving. Okay, I basically just said all this, didn't I? Okay, this is what we're, okay, thank you. So we could either adopt the TPES system and move forward with that, or we could modify the system that we have currently. Or I guess we could start over from scratch and build something else as well. What we have talked about is, and actually in consultation with the success team, with our principals, is taking our current document that we're using, our current process, and modifying it and not going all the way into TPES. T-TEST, as we have talked about a few minutes ago, is going to be a lot of work. It's going to be a lot of work on the teacher's part, and it's going to be a tremendous amount of work on the part of the principals and the assistant principals. To take two brand new systems in at the same time when we have the option not to, we felt it was better to take a document that we have that we think works fairly well and improve upon it. So what we want to do is we want to have three different components to our principal evaluation system. So have a goal-setting component like we do right now, accompanied with a professional development plan. So that was just taking the next step, not only the goals, but how and the support that the superintendent or deputy superintendent or whoever is working with the principals in the process of that evaluation and supervision would be developing a individual professional development plan and working through that. We also want to bring in some coaching aspects to that. So it's not just the one direct report who is having a conversation with the principal, but it will be that person, the evaluator, and also another CSISD administrator to come in and work in a coaching model, a non-evaluative model, but working alongside to help to see growth in that particular area. And then to bring back that student growth measure to begin in 2017, 2018. We think it's important that teachers are going to have that growth measure. Their principals and assistant principals should have that growth measure as well. Now, maybe the legislature will act in 2017 to take that away. I'm not sure. But our plan is to have a student growth measure to be a part of the principal evaluation system as well, and to begin when the teachers begins in 2017-18. So our focus on this will be about administrators' goals and growth, not about a number and not about a summative numerical rating. And so we're looking at what those domains might look like, or how we might rate. And what we're thinking right now as we're developing the instrument is moving from the old words that we had there to similar language we have to T-test. You know, proficient. If you're not proficient, you're developing in that area, or you're accomplished, and using some of those same terms to be a lot more equal with T-test. So one thing So with principal evaluation, we do have to have some board action before the school year starts. If we want to use an evaluation instrument that is different than TPAS, we must have board action, and we must have DEIC make that approval. We're continuing the work on this document and this process right now. We've had already a couple meetings in regards to that. We plan on bringing the instrument to DEIC in June. And bring it to the school board in June as well, perhaps July if we need a little bit more time to work on some aspects of it. So that was what we will need moving forward. I'd love to answer any questions about principal appraisal or teacher appraisal or anything you have in regard to this.
Thank you for that summary. So the one thing that sticks out in my mind, I think there will need to be an education process on the acceptance of what proficient means. Proficient in our, everybody makes an A and everybody gets a performance ribbon for everything, makes that word have lost some of its meaning where back in the olden days, that was good. And so to me, perhaps we need to go back and think about proficient as a fully skilled professional or something, but we have to be sure that everyone in our district is using the explanation words along with it so that we all become comfortable that that is not a negative rating. When I look at the colorful chart that Ms. Kovac showed us, we just need to be sure that we use that as part of our educational process for ourselves, for our teachers, for the board. I think that we need to decide what the elevator speech on what proficient means is going to be.
I appreciate that, Dr. Yokin. Part of the conversation that Kelly and I had that I lost was to kind of take the board through something like that to show you just on one indicator what proficient looks like. And proficient is a very high standard. When I look at the good instruction that I'm seeing in the classrooms that I'm going into, I see a lot of proficient instruction, and it's really, really good instruction. To get above proficient takes not only the good instruction that you're seeing in the classroom that time that you're in there, it's a lot more work and additional things in the classroom, on the campus, in the district level, in the community. Those types of things can be part of the things that raise you from proficient to something higher. So I think you've hit the nail on the head. Proficient is not a bad thing. Proficient is a very good thing. Do you have anything to add to that?
Well, I was just going to say that if you had a side-by-side in some ways of the current system and the new system, what we would say a teacher is exceeding expectations is now what is in the same column as proficient on the new system. So it is going to take a lot of education about proficient being an excellent teacher.
So I know, when I've gone through appraisal systems in the past, sometimes the explanation of a fully skilled professional that you're hitting all the cylinders, and that's why it's called proficient, because you're doing all those things. So somehow, perhaps if we can get that a little richer, I do think that there would be some benefit, and I do think it will be important that the board become educated in whatever vocabulary you choose to use, because it will help us at the grocery store. Any other comments?
I have a comment. While I want to be educated, I think it's more important that the teachers be educated, because I think if they're educated, we won't run into them at the grocery store to tell us. The only comment that I have is, when you tie something to student performance, that has to be defined clearly, because, what happened is in the past is that people begin to think that you're teaching to the test. So somehow we've got to not only educate the teachers and the board, but we've got to educate the community, because you do not want that to be taken. There's got to be a variety of ways that we, I guess, look at student performance would be my thing, because you don't want people to think that we're taking away some kind of professionalism for the teachers of being able to teach and not be teaching to the test, because that's what's happened in the past. Or whether it happened or not it's the perception. We keep talking about that. The perception then becomes reality. So I don't know how you go about that, or how you go about deciding that, or if the state's going to decide that for you. I don't know. It didn't look like you had 4 different opportunities.
Yeah, so it didn't say star up there. We have some different options. So you could be using star scores, and perhaps there will be districts across the state that will choose that. You could do pre and post tests. You could use other district-made assessments. You could use portfolio assessment. Those all have pluses and minuses, and as far as being good reflections of student growth and student performance. So we will tread very carefully into that. I think that's why, as Ms. Kovacs said, we're not seeing any districts who are jumping out there right now with that 20% and adding it to it, because it's a very difficult proposition for administrators and teachers alike to determine what's the fairest way to assess that.
I'd hate to see us go back to it being based on a one-day. When we've gone to so much trouble, I think, in our district to say we have some district appraisal that we do, that we've gone this way to evaluate ourselves for the very reasons we don't want to be evaluated on one test on one day. And I would hate to see us go back and a teacher be evaluated on one test one day. It's like, it goes back to, in my mind, coaching, which I know we all appreciate. We're depending on 18 to 22-year-olds to determine on one game that the coach stays or doesn't. And I would hate to see that same type of thing happen to our teachers, because I don't think it's fair. I personally don't think it's fair. I think a lot of parents feel that way as well, because you could have a great teacher that one day, for whatever reason, the class doesn't do well on a test. And so I just would caution, and I know you all are, but I just wanted to say that out loud, that I would hate to see that be part of that 20%. That would give me a lot of angst as a teacher and a professional.
Well, I echo your concerns about that. That's what makes it different. I think to do that would not be congruent with many of the decisions that we've made in regards to assessment and accountability. If you go back to our community-based accountability system,
Yeah.
all those things that you were talking about are de-emphasized. And
Right.
other things are emphasized. So I don't know how some of those things could equate to student performance. I don't know if they could, but I think that's a good indication of the types of things that we're doing in College Station ISD to measure ourselves.
I just didn't know how much the state would have to, like I know you said we can do some things. I don't know. I don't know enough about.
We don't know either. As Mrs. Kovacs said, we haven't had training on this component of it yet. So there is a lot that's still to come on this, and it will be a hot button issue as we move into 2017.
I have a comment about, it ties into the student growth. I like that better than the term student performance. It seems to me that regardless of what the federal government or the state government does, we need some way to compare what it is we are evaluating our teachers on, the other 80%, and how that correlates or relates to student growth. Because if we have somebody doing well here, yet we're consistently not doing well here, maybe we need to reevaluate what it is we're evaluating. So I hope that we keep that in mind. However the political fight in Austin shakes out, that at least we keep an eye on kind of that bottom line of student growth. And again, I like that. I don't think it's you set a line and if they jump over it, we call that a check mark. I like the idea of each kid being looked at and are they progressing.
And that is what the state wants to look at, student growth, not performance.
Good. Anyway, that's my comment.
Anything else? All right, thank you very much. With that, we're adjourned and we'll come back a little before 7. Thank you.